Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us for our free webinar session today. This session is presented by Cosmos. We're going to be talking about their lightning fast reporting and analytics for Business Central Cloud. We estimate that today's webinar will take up about 30 minutes to an hour of your time, including some time at the end for a Q&A. Our webinar is being recorded and will be available on demand after the live session as well. All attendees will receive a follow-up email after the webinar is complete with a link to access the presentation. In the chat, you can also find links to our social media, website, as well as a link to our Calendly, where you can schedule a 30-minute meeting with one of our experts at Sabre to discuss any questions that you might have. With that being said, I'd please submit your questions through the question panel or chat during the session, or wait until the end for our Q&A. Please remember to stay muted during the session unless otherwise prompted. Now, I'd like to introduce you to Anthony Bonaduce, CRO at Cosmos.
Awesome. Thank you, Caitlin. And obviously, thank you for all the hard work you put into getting everything organized and coordinated. And obviously, thank you to everyone today that chose to carve out some of their time and their busy schedule to take a look at Cosmos. And so I'm super excited, to take you through kind of a soup to nuts comprehensive overview of Cosmos. And as Caitlin said, we're widely regarded or well known as like the de facto reporting and analytics solution for Business Central Cloud users in a third-party capacity. Obviously, ERPs, while they do have reporting capabilities, they're not always the most business user friendly. Maybe there's, limitations that you found or ran into around certain things you'd want to do around reporting. And so, reporting in a third-party capacity has become, one of the biggest priorities for people when it comes to, working with their ERP data. And so today we're going to show you Cosmos. We're going to talk about it in depth, cover all the different components of the product, and really just show you the ins and outs. The nice thing about this is that Cosmos is designed to work with Business Central, period, end of discussion. So whether you're in the manufacturing space or some other industry, this solution is built for you. Our qualifying factor is, are you on Business Central Cloud? So depending on what kinds of reports you care about, financials, sales, inventory, manufacturing, operational reports, doesn't matter. All of that is going to be covered today, and you're able to, bring your data into powerful, refreshable Excel reports, Power BI dashboards and reports. So if you've been struggling with any of those things, I think this is going to be really relevant to you. So what we're going to do, we're going to go through just a few slides. I'm not a death by PowerPoint person, so we'll go through a few slides, and then we're going to get into product. And like I said, I'm going to show you kind of all the bells and whistles and ins and outs that the product has to offer. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the way I describe Cosmos to people is it's the first and only fully cloud-based reporting and analytics platform that's born in the cloud and built specifically for Business Central Cloud. So that's kind of how I sum it up in a couple sentences. Now, as far as our agenda today, I'll do a quick intro just on our company so you know who the heck is talking here. Then we'll talk about the various components of the product. And then, like I said, we're going to jump kind of directly into a solution overview or a demonstration of the product in action. Obviously, if you have questions throughout this, as Caitlin mentioned, feel free to drop those in the chat and we'll hit some of those at the end. And again, this is all going to be recorded so we can get that shared out as well. So first things first, just a little bit about us. I'm not going to read everything here that's on the slide. I think the most important point is up here on the top right? So my founding team and I have had, I think, close to 55 years at this point of experience, in a third-party reporting capacity for Microsoft. So we've worked with customers on GP, on Nav. Obviously, now it's all Business Central. And so, we really grew up in this space. And we realized very quickly that there was a big gap when it came to third-party reporting in the Business Central space. Nothing was really purpose-built for that. So we drew on our decades of experience and we decided to release Cosmos. And when we thought about what we needed to focus on, we thought about what users ultimately care about in these types of tools. They want reporting that's lightning fast. They want it to be easy to use, built for business users, right? They want it to be secure. Obviously, we're dealing with your data. You want to make sure that's secure. And in today's modern business world, people want things in the cloud. That's the direction we're all headed towards. And so those are kind of the four pillars that we stood upon as we built the solution. Now, what made us famous was performance. So I used to work at a reporting solution that was very prominent for Microsoft Nav. And, will it work with Business Central? Yes, but it's very, very slow. The thing about Business Central is that you have to approach it in a very proper way. It's the first cloud ERP from Microsoft, and cloud is just a whole different beast. The way you connect to it matters, the way you pull the data matters, all those kind of nuances around a really disruptive new ERP system from Microsoft were all taken into account. And because we worked with Microsoft and really focused in those areas, we ended up benchmarking 48 times faster than the kind of legacy reporting solutions that you've seen in our, Microsoft channel. So that's something we're really proud of, and that's ultimately, like I said, kind of what made us famous. So we'll talk more about that. But product wise, I'm going to take you through a whole bunch of stuff today. And I guess, dump it into four different buckets. So we're going to start out in the Cosmos portal. You can think of this like your homepage, right? When you go to work and start your day, you're going to log in here, or throughout the day, you're going to log in here for anything reporting related. You can see all the things on the screen, but this is where you're going to go to create new reports, run existing reports, work with Power BI, manage users, roles, permissions, whatever it is you want to do. It starts and ends here in the cloud, in the web, in your Cosmos portal. So we're going to kick things off there in just a moment. Then I want to show you what it's like to actually create reports in Cosmos. So, we'll throw together, I guess, just to keep it kind of generic and relevant to the whole audience, we'll probably throw together like a financial statement or something like that today. But I like to just really emphasize here that the experience you're going to see is built for business users, someone that's in finance and accounting or sales or what have you, right? Someone that is a proper business user can really take the reins on this and can create any report they want inside of a friendly and familiar Excel interface. So we'll take a look at that, see what that experience is like. And I think again you'll kind of get the feel of just the product in general. Now, I mentioned this earlier, but in addition to Excel, we were asked a couple years ago by the Microsoft partner community to really simplify the story around Power BI. I spend every single day of my business week, right, talking to customers that, want to use Power BI, they want to use Excel, they want reports, they want dashboards. And so we built a really nice two-way integration with Microsoft Power BI that enables business users to really again, take the reins of this product as well. Power BI, if you've tried it, it's a fantastic product, but it definitely requires you to have some technical chops. You need to know SQL and DAX and Power Query and other coding languages. And as business users, we don't really have that skill set. And so the nice thing here is if you leverage Power BI in conjunction with Cosmos, you don't need to know that stuff. You don't need to be a SQL or a DAX expert. It really just becomes a proper drag and drop point click type exercise to create this stuff. So we'll look at that. And then finally, we'll wrap up with just a quick overview of the back end of the product. So I always tell people like this is the area that A, you're not going to spend a lot of time in, but B is, kind of more about the data, less about the reports or dashboards, more like what's happening on the back end or under the hood. But I always just like to make sure when I show this that people get kind of the full 360-degree view. So that's kind of what's on the docket. So I think we've all seen enough PowerPoint. My plan is to switch gears here and I'm going to pull up Cosmos and we're going to dive right in. So on my screen, you're looking at the Cosmos portal. So I'm going to log in here. Everything is very seamless with Microsoft. So it's logging me in with my Microsoft credentials. Now it's a little bit funky when I log in here in my demo setup. I'm the main administrator for my environment. So I control all my users and their roles and permissions and things like that. So it kind of lands me in this section. Most users are going to pop in right here and they're going to see any reports they've built or that have been shared with them. And that's a really key distinction I always like to pause on. This is not an organization-wide free-for-all of reporting. There are obviously reports that are sensitive that you don't want shared with certain users. Maybe it's your financials, for example. And so on any of these reports, once they're created, you're going to choose who within the organization has access to those. So you can see here in just a click, I can share this with Aaliyah, or I can share it with Jane or whoever. But if I don't share it with Aaliyah, when she logs into Cosmos, when her view will not show this tile, this financial statement will not be available to her. So again, I just like to mention, of course, we've thought about security and who has access to what. Very easy to administer that within the platform. Now, I know we landed on this admin section when I logged in again because I'm that main administrator, but I like to take a second to just explain this because it, always comes up if I don't. So there's two user types within Cosmos. There's what we call full users and light users. Full users are going to be those people that are actually creating reports. So these are going to be the ones building reports and dashboards, as well as refreshing them, running them, right? But these are like your authors. You can kind of think of that synonymous with full user. Light users are people that just need to run existing reports or look at dashboards that have been shared with them. So they're not going to build anything, but they can come in and say, hey, I want to run this financial statement for this department for this month. And then, of course, they can kind of parse out the data accordingly. Down here at the bottom is a user type for us in Sabre. And that way, as our customers come on board, if there's support related items, they need help on reports, whatever it is, we can get in there in a secure manner and help them out accordingly. We don't obviously charge for these. This is just a way to make sure you as a customer knows who else can get in here. So those are kind of the core user types. Now, I want to talk about kind of that light user experience, right? Someone that's going to be coming in here, refreshing reports, seeing the latest stuff. And one of the things you'll notice in my portal and my demo setup, there are lots of different reports that I have, kind of available to show on my demos. One of the nice things and things that makes Cosmos so unique is that you are up and running in 25 minutes. This is not a heavy implementation. Do not expect thousands of dollars, of investment to get this thing stood up. That's not how it works. It is a proper cloud solution. You're up and running in 25 minutes. And when you go live, you have access to dozens of pre-built reports. So out of the box, there's reports around, APAR, sales, finance, inventory, purchasing. Oftentimes customers want to build reports around manufacturing or jobs or whatever it is. I mean, you can create anything in here that you want. But you'll see that I've got lots of different reports. And if I just pick on one of these, maybe I'll do this income statement by dimension. I can click this run button. Over here on the right, we're going to see our filter options. So in this specific report, I just have filters for dates, but we could have filters for dates, departments, companies, locations, whatever you want. I just chose to have a date filter here. So you can interact with those and kind of decide what data you want to return. And then all you're going to do is hit this little run button. And you'll see here, everything's going to spin up in the cloud. It's going to look at Business Central and it's going to pull in all that data. So you can actually see, one of our pointers when we put together the presentation today was lightning fast reporting. And you can see here that this report's already done. Took a few seconds. At this point, we can either open this in Excel Online or Excel Desktop. I'm just going to pick Excel Online. What this is going to do is open up a nice clean, it's going to ask me to sign in today. That's very nice. But now that I've signed in, it's going to open up my nice clean report. And one of the things I want to mention, historically in our space, with a lot of the legacy reporting tools, when you went in and you ran a report, it would occupy your Excel instance. And with the performance issues that some tools have against Business Central, you might have a report that's going to take 45 minutes to run. And in those tools, you just can't use Excel for 45 minutes. We built this to be proper cloud. So when you're running a report in Cosmos, it is not tying up Excel. It's not locking you out of there. and it doesn't take 45 minutes. So it's very, very fast, but we also made sure that it doesn't interfere with, the customer's ability to get in and do their day to day while things are running. So the report's been ran. We can see our nice clean income statement by, in this case, global dimension. My global dimension in my sample data set is product group, which is why you see that going across the top. And again, this is one flavor of a million different income statement formats. But just to give you a general look and feel, the cool thing here is you can define the layout, make this look and feel however you want. And I'm going to show you that here when we actually create a report in just a few moments. Now, once we've ran a report, a big part of our job is to actually analyze the data, right? Look over it, see what's happening. And that's something people really like and appreciate the approach we've taken here in Cosmos. So there's a little window I can pop out, or a task pane here. And this is my ability to kind of explore the data or explore the report. So if I look at this and I think, man, $379,000 for this dimension value, that seems really high. Something seems off there. Well, maybe I just built this report. It's the first time I've ever ran it. And I want to see what is actually happening to calculate that $380,000 number. Well, I can open these little, drop downs up, and I can see that we're summing up the amounts from our GL transactions. We've reversed the sign to show positive values here. And we can see that we're filtered on account 44200 for our electronics product group for the month of June. So it's very easy for me to check the plumbing in the case that maybe a number looks off, something's going on. Well, if that number still doesn't look right, but everything we saw here, is how we meant to build the report, then we probably have something off in Business Central. And what I'd want to do is drill down into that number and see the transaction level detail that makes up that $380,000 number. So what this did is it ran a quick report in the background, and it returned all the transaction level detail that makes up that $380,000 number. So at this point, I can kind of analyze the raw data. I can sort, I can filter. If I just want to pivot the information, just to do some quick drag and drop analysis, I have all of that at my fingertips. So that way we wanted to make sure you don't just have those high level numbers in your report, you also have the ability to do that analysis piece, which is so critical with any reporting tool. So that's kind of your day-to-day coming in, running reports. So what I want to do, I'm going to close out of here. I want to go back to the portal, and I want to talk about a couple little bells and whistles. So one of them is security. We already talked about that, but the ability to easily administer security on the different reports that your organization, uses or intends to use. The other piece, though, that's really interesting and is used a ton by our customers is the concept of report scheduling and automation. So what this interface does is it allows you to automate the running and distribution of your reports. So let's say that you're in finance and you want to have, a set of preliminary financials in your inbox on the first of every month. This is how you can do that. You can say, hey, on the first, set it up to run at 8 a.m. or 7:30 before I get into work. And when I walk in, I want to start my closing process. You can have reports go on days of the week, days of the month, whatever you want to do here. And again, we're not nickel and dimers. If you have folks that you want to send reports to, there is no cost to do that. They don't need a license to receive those reports. So you can set that up to just run and send out to as many folks as you'd like. And there's a lot of different flavors of scheduling within Cosmos. There's what we call standard scheduling, and that's run a report every Monday at 9 a.m. and send it to Caitlin. Pretty straightforward. There's also what we call batch scheduling. And batch scheduling, the concept there is, hey, I've got 8 regional managers, and I want them to only receive data for their region. So run this report for region A and send it to Bob, and then run it for region B and send it to Karen, and then run it for region C and send it to Anthony, right? Like a way to just automate different iterations of a report and send them to the appropriate users. You can also do what's called a manual scheduled release. And this was a feature request from folks in the finance world. They said, you know what? We want to use scheduling. It's just very difficult to know how to do that because, we don't want reports to go out yesterday if we're not done with the books until today. And likewise, if we are done with the books today, we don't want them to wait to go out till tomorrow. So you can also set your full distribution routing and then just push a button, and Cosmos is going to send those reports out on demand to everyone you wanted them to go out to. So this is a really, really heavily used feature. I think last month we had around 52,000 scheduled reports. And so again, very, very popular amongst our customer base. But that's kind of the gist of like coming in here and running reports. Now, what I want to do is I want to create a quick report just to show kind of that experience. Now, before I do that, one of the things customers really appreciate, all of our training is here on our website. And if you want to dig in deeper after you watch this webinar, feel free to come to cosmosdatatech.com. At the top is our full training library. There's a quick start section, how to create reports, just coming in, running reports, working with your data models. What I'm showing today is not meant to be a training, obviously, but you do have access to all that. In addition to our training, you have our full knowledge base. And on here are, literally hundreds of articles. If you want to figure out like, how do I do grouping in a report? You can search for that word. You'll see there's an article. Every one of these, articles has a video walkthrough as well as step-by-step follow the bouncing ball type approach. So depending on how you like to learn, all that stuff is readily available to you here on our site. So I'm going to close out of these, but I wanted to just mention, I don't expect you to look at this for the next 20 minutes and go, I'm an expert, right? Obviously, we're going to work with you and there's training. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new report. Now, like I said, doesn't matter what you want to build. If it's a manufacturing report, a sales report, inventory, purchasing, whatever you want to do, Cosmos is here to be that solution. But just to keep this kind of generic, I'm going to focus on like a financial statement, pretty straightforward. So maybe I want to come in here and build like a monthly, income statement by company or something like that. So I can give it a name. If I want to author it in Excel desktop, I'll just check this box. Otherwise, it will default to Excel Online since it is a cloud-based reporting tool, but it does work with any flavor of Excel. Excel for Windows, Mac, smartphones, tablets, whatever you want to build in, you can. But I'm going to create this new report, and what it's going to do is drop a new report tile into my workspace. So think of that like work in progress. Anything you're in the middle of will live right here. If you're halfway through a report and you get called into a meeting, you can just close out of Cosmos, come back to it later, and pick up exactly where you left off. But it's opened up this Excel template here. And again, this is where we typically build it. So let's go ahead and give this kind of a title here. So like I said, I'm going to call this my, if I could type, my monthly IS by company. I can come in here and kind of lay out some of the things I want to see, my GL account numbers, maybe the name, the category, the subcategory it's in, maybe the months going across columns, whatever I want to do. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on formatting just for example's sake and to, not waste people's time today. You can format till your heart's content. I'm going to come through here and just clean things up just a little bit so it looks decent. But obviously you can drop in your company logos or, reference your filters or beautify this as much as you would like. So I'm going to give myself just a tad bit of room here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to come up here and I'm going to launch my Cosmos add-in. So this is how you're going to create your Excel-based reports. Now, the nice thing here again is it's a very logical flow. So you can see here on the right, these are kind of the different operators at your disposal to go and build, in this case, this income statement by company. As I said earlier, we've been doing this for literally decades upon decades, and we've worked with so many products in the third-party reporting world, and we really tried to simplify this, streamline it, make it kind of follow that logical approach that we expect business users to take when they want to build a report. So for starters, we're going to click New here. And we want to add some report options. So I can come in here and click New. And what we'll see here, sorry, my Excel's behaving very strangely, but we'll see that we have our report options section, and we can see the different kind of sections within, the product itself. So here at the top, I'm going to just click new, and we'll see that we have all of our kind of nice, clean data at our fingertips. So we can see we've got things around, different tables and fields, but we take a data warehouse approach, a modern approach to reporting. All of your business central data, again, across any of those subject areas, is very clean and consolidated, organized, and kind of laid out in that nice business user friendly format. You're not sifting through 1,700 tables and 53,000 fields that you have to make sense of. So the first thing we're doing is adding report options. Think of these like filters. So when I run that report, what do I want to be able to toggle between? Dates, departments, companies, etc. So if I wanted to add a filter for year, obviously that's going to live here in my date table, and I can find year right here at the bottom. But I don't need to make it that difficult. I can say, hey, I want to search for year, and we'll come down, we'll grab year, and we'll throw in some sort of default value. We'll be able to toggle this later, and we'll click save. That's it. If you want to add more filters, rinse and repeat. You want one for company, you want one for, location or for whatever it is, job, doesn't matter. Add as many as you want. For example's sake, I'm just going to add one filter today, but you can have as many as you need. Now, the next step is totally optional, but it's used a ton, so I always like to show it, and that's the ability to break out reports across sheets. So in this case, I said I want an income statement by company, but maybe I'd like to see each company have its own income statement on a separate sheet within my workbook. So I can come in here and say, hey, split out my companies within the sheet list, and we'll click save. Now, that's really powerful on its own, but one of the things people love is that we also implemented this concept of child sheets. So let's say in a real life example, we do have multiple companies. And on sheet one, we want to see an all company consolidated income statement. I want to see them all together on one report. Then I want to see an income statement for each company as a child sheet. So separate them out. And below each company sheet, I want to see it broken out by department, right? You can kind of do like a nice nesting or hierarchy of reports going across those sheets. So for example's sake, I'm just going to do one level, but we could kind of go deeper if we wanted to. Now, next thing we want to do, we want to list out data when the report runs. So I'm going to grab below my headers. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go to my GL transactions, and I want to start by pulling my GL account numbers. So I'm going to go down to GL account number, and I'm going to add that into my range list, and we'll click save. Now, I guess I could click save, but that's going to give me my entire, chart of accounts, and I don't want that. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to filter that down. So in my income statement, for example, I want to see my revenue accounts at the top. So what I might do is I might say, well, yes, give me the GL accounts that are between 40,000 and 49,999 for my revenue accounts. You don't have to use ranges. You could point to a category in BC, a subcategory, individual accounts, combinations thereof, whatever you want to do. But the nice thing about ranges, categories, and subcategories is it will future-proof your report. Meaning if you add 3 accounts into BC 6 months after you built this report, they're going to show up the next time you run it because they're going to fall into that range or that category or whatever. So you could certainly do it other ways, but we always recommend using ranges, categories, or subcategories. So all that's going to do is list out my 40,000s in column A and drag this chunk down as it does that. Now I also want to get my months going across columns. So I can come in here and I can say, hey, in the shape of a column, list out the months in the year. And I'll just click save. So this is going to give me Jan, Feb, March, April, right across my workbook. So now we want to go in and list out the fields that we care about. So the account name and category and subcategory. And the nice thing about a relational database is that it's smart. It's not going to show you, inventory tables right now. Those don't have anything to do with our financials. So I'm going to open up my financial information and I want to get the name of this GL account number. So I'm going to go down to GL account. I'm going to ask for the GL account name. Then I want the category and the subcategory. Lastly, I want to aggregate or sum up my amounts by month. So I'll go to GL transactions and I'll tell Cosmos sum up my amounts. Now, just for some housekeeping, I can reverse the sign. As we know, ERPs store those numbers as negative values and we want to make them positive. So we're going to reverse that. And we can see down here at the bottom, all my filtering has already plumbed up. So when it gives me that amount, it's going to be for the company on this sheet, the GL account to the left, the month in each column that gets created, and based on the year we enter as a report option. And if we want to be really prim and proper, we could even just add a filter to say, make sure you exclude my closing entries. I don't want to see those sneak into my numbers in my report. And we'll click save. So at this point, we have our total revenue. I can come over here and use an Excel sum just to total all that up. Again, we're working inside of a friendly and familiar environment with Microsoft Excel. And then at this point, we're mostly done with this whole income statement. So I've built out my revenue section. I need to get my COGS and my expenses, or maybe you want to get more granular. I could rebuild those steps, but it'd kind of be a waste of my time. So I'm just going to copy this and I'm going to paste down another section. And I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to paste down one more time. Now I can come in here and I can put my net income at the bottom. I can total these up. I can format things a little bit, kind of get it looking how we want. And then I'm just going to change my labels. This is going to be my COGS. This is going to be my expenses. And then over here on the left, I like to just align these on the left side so they look nice. So to show you what we did there, we had our 40,000s listing out at the top. Then we said to list out our months going across columns. And then we copied that 40,000 section 2 more times. So you can probably guess where I'm going with this, but I'm going to come in here and I'm just going to point this to my 50,000s instead for my COGS accounts. And we'll click save. Same thing here. We don't want our 40,000s again. This time we want our 60,000s and we want to take that out, in this case, for example's sake, just through the end of our account string. And we'll click save. So at this point, we're done. In a real life example, I'd probably preview this report. I want to see what the output looks like. So I can see my filter I set up here. I could run that preview. It would open the finished version in a new tab. You can drag that to your other monitor and then look at that while you make any last minute tweaks or edits to your template here. But once you're done, we'll close out. At this point, we can put an image, a screenshot, a company logo, leave it blank, whatever we want to do. I'm just going to check it in blank to my library, and we'll see it's going to pop down into my report library here. Now, just as a reminder, this is sensitive information. These are my financials. So I'm the only one that has access to it. I haven't shared it with anyone else. If anybody else in my organization logs into Cosmos, they're not going to see this report yet because I haven't shared it with them. So I could do that now, but I'm going to go ahead and run this report. Over here on the right, we see that year filter we built in. So I can toggle that, run it for multiple years, whatever I want to do. I'm just going to run it for 2024 based on my sample data here. And what we'll see is this report's going to behave a bit differently than this previous example we ran. So on this report, we just had it building out a single report. On this one, we said, give me a separate report for each company. So we can see that those have been split out into their own proper reports. Now at this point, I can open this again in Excel Online or Excel Desktop. I'll just use Excel Online. And we'll see here we have a nice clean income statement by month. Obviously, I could have locked freeze panes or things like that just to tighten things up. But we have our months going across, we have our accounts going down, net income here at the bottom. And as you'll see, we have a separate sheet for each of our companies here at the bottom. So that's kind of the general idea of how you author reports in Cosmos. Obviously, as I mentioned earlier, one flavor of a million different income statement formats. Maybe you'd rather have Jan actuals and budget for Jan, and then variance and variance percent, and then you'd see Feb and March, or maybe you'd like to see, current month and prior month and current month last year. This is more of a detailed income statement, so maybe you'd rather have these roll up or consolidate down to fewer lines. All of that stuff is supported by Cosmos. Any report you want to create is exactly what this tool is designed to help you with. But in a few, that report, I obviously walked through it slowly to explain it all. That's a report I can build in 2 minutes if I'm not talking through everything. So that's kind of the Excel side of things. What I want to do next is I want to switch gears and I want to talk a little bit about where Power BI fits into this whole equation. So I'm going to close out of here. And just to kind of set the foundation, I've switched gears and I've pulled up Power BI Desktop. So this is where you go to build your reports in Power BI. Now, I get a question very, very often where people say, hey, should we just do everything in Power BI or should we do everything in Excel? Our team's split on that and we can't decide which way we want to go. And I always tell people Power BI and Excel are not competitors. They're two different products, two different front ends that convey your data differently. Where Excel is very strong at rows and columns and quick calculations and, really granular formatting, Power BI is kind of the opposite, right? That's kind of its weak spot. On the other hand, Power BI is so strong at data visualization. And it's right here in Microsoft's own words. I don't know why it confuses people so much, but Power BI is a data visualization tool. It's like a Tableau, if you're familiar with that. So Power BI's strength is dashboards, visuals. Its weak spot are rows and columns. Can you do some of that in here? Absolutely. But it's not at the level that people want, right? If you want those really, prim and proper Excel style row and column reports, do that in Excel. So I always tell people use both, right? They both have their purpose. Now, the thing to understand about Power BI is that it's what we call a BYOD analytics tool, which means bring your own data. You can see here on the connections that Power BI can hook up to just about anything out there. But that's where your journey starts. If you've tried to use Power BI and maybe you've struggled or haven't gotten very far, that's why, right? Power BI doesn't have any real understanding of the data set that it's connected to. And so in the case of Business Central, the way that Power BI works is there's a base API that Microsoft provides. You connect it to your BC data, and you're going to see a very limited set of tables and fields. You're not going to see your custom tables and fields or per tenant extensions. You're not going to even see all of the base BC tables. And so what you have to do is you have to modify that API. You have to expose additional tables and fields. Now, once you've done that, you have to model the data. You often hear people talk about their Power BI models, right? This is what they're referring to. Trying to be able to say, well, I need to build sales reports. So I know I need sales information, my global dimensions, dates, I need salespeople, customers, items. Well, that data all lives in different places in BC. So what you have to do is you have to get these relationships, these joins between tables, these links. And the problem is for most business users is that's typically a coding exercise. You have to write SQL, you have to write DAX, Power Query, etc. So, it can be very intimidating and frankly, it can kind of stop business users in their tracks. Because as I mentioned earlier, someone in finance or someone in sales, like we're not coders. That's not what we do. So the relief comes in here because one of the things you can do is you can connect Power BI to your Cosmos data warehouse. Data warehouses are inherently relational. They already have those joined up tables and links. So I've loaded in some data from my Cosmos data warehouse, and it's already in that what we call star schema. So we have kind of the core of what we're trying to do called sales, and then we have all the branches of the star that we need to report off of. So I have that data here, and now I can do the easy part, the fun part of Power BI. I don't need to be a rocket scientist to come in here and say, I want to see sales by salesperson, and I want to drop that on this style of visual. And then I want to see what they're selling. So I'm going to do sales by, item category or item or product group or whatever. And then I want to see where we're selling the most products. So maybe I bring in some sort of, location and I do sales amount by that, my customer location or whatever. So in a few clicks, I have a dashboard. I didn't need to write any code. I didn't need to be a SQL or DAX expert. And I can slice and dice and interact with all my data, do my analysis, right? All those things I might want to do. And if I take it a step further, I can kind of, beautify it a little bit, put a title, some slicers, kind of clean things up and get it looking how we want. And traditionally now I would publish this to powerbi.com. And that's where users typically go to consume it. Now, you do have the ability to embed these types of, Power BI reports and dashboards into Teams and Business Central and CRM and other Microsoft applications. But I've found working with, thousands of customers, they don't tend to really do that. They tend to just kind of go to powerbi.com and consume the content there. And the feedback from the market is that we don't really like that because we feel like we have a disjointed approach to reporting. We're just trying to accomplish data access, but we've got reports in Cosmos, dashboards in PowerBI.com, reports in Business Central. There's too many places to tell my users to go to get information. And so what we did is we said, well, you know what? We're already logged in with my Microsoft credentials. So if I click on this Power BI section here in Cosmos, it actually authenticates on my behalf and it returns any of those Power BI reports and dashboards that I would otherwise have access to in powerbi.com in one place. So in 1 minute, I can be in my Excel reports. The next, I can come in here and see anything Power BI that I have access to. So now I can actually launch these directly inside of my Cosmos portal. I haven't signed in today, so it's going to ask me to do that. But once I've done that, you'll see the URL is still Cosmos. We're still in my portal, but here's some of my Power BI reports and dashboards. So it really gives you, in summary, like a nice two-way integration. Your clean, one version of the truth data warehouse data into powerbi.com, your Power BI back into Cosmos, and then you still have all of your Excel-based reports here in one platform. So this truly becomes like a one-stop shop. Everything you need is here. And again, as I mentioned earlier, you're up and running in 25 minutes. So people love that. So that's the Power BI piece. The last piece I want to talk about before we open it up for some questions is just the back end of the product. This is an area that most of your users will never see, never touch. They don't even really need to know it exists. You have control over who can even get to it. So since I'm an administrator, you see I have this data management section. I can take that away from myself since I'm an admin, and you'll see that it's going to disappear over here on the left, right? It's just gone. So you're going to control who can actually get to your source of truth, your data, right? And decide who that should be. Obviously, our team can help with that. Sabre can help with that stuff as well. But you don't want a lot of hands in the cookie jar when it comes to your data itself. So here is the backend piece. Now, as part of our 25-minute onboarding, we're going to install our Business Central extension. It's published and validated by Microsoft up on AppSource. And that's what establishes the connectivity between Cosmos and your Business Central data. To be clear, there is no write back. We're never pushing data to BC. It's just reading data out of Business Central for reporting purposes. So you can edit your companies here if you ever make an acquisition and you work with Sabre and they bring that company live in BC. All you'd have to do is check the box and click save. But this is where you define what companies you want to pull from. Down here at the bottom, similar to how we have pre-built reports, we have our pre-built data warehouse schema. So the ones we ship just out of the box on day one, you can see here. There's lots of others, obviously, that we work with customers on. For example, if you're a manufacturing customer, as part of our onboarding, we'll just spend an hour or two with you to build that bespoke because everyone is so unique when it comes to manufacturing and how they use that data. So that's just kind of bundled into our implementation, which, like I said, is very, very fast. But, those are kind of your out of the box ones. And those snap together to form this nice, clean data model or data warehouse structure on day one. Now, if you're not familiar with data warehouses, the reason people love them is they enable amazing performance and speed. They enable a ton of ease of use. and they enable consolidation. So, for example, earlier in Power BI, I built out a little dashboard off of my sales data. Well, the reason that was so easy is because I had this one table for sales information that I was able to pull from. But when I click on here, the reason it's just one table is because behind the scenes from Business Central, we're pulling the value entry table, the return receipt line, the sales credit memo line. There's 8 different tables that have come together to form this nice single table in Cosmos. Same thing with like purchasing data. It's one table, but it's made up of the value entry, purchase credit memo line, purchase invoice line. All of this is customizable by checking boxes, basically. There's no coding in our entire product. So you see here in this section, this is everything in your Business Central tenant, every single table, custom or otherwise. Anything contained gets exposed. You can easily select additional tables you want to pull data from, or maybe you want to come in here and just add a field. Well, I could go to my customer table and I could say, hey, for reporting purposes, I need this little address field. So I'm going to check the box. I'll come into my data model. I'll go to my customer section and I'll just say I want to add a new field. I can caption it so I can name it whatever makes sense to my business users. It doesn't have to match up with what it's called in BC. We'll create it. And over here on the right, we'll just map in address. We'll just drop that field in. And then we'll come out and publish out our changes. Our application does all the data movement and cleansing and merging of the data. Again, it's what we call a no-code ETL tool to extract the data from BC, transform it, and load it into your nice clean data warehouse. So again, I won't go super deep on that. You have the ability to do all kinds of stuff here, calculated fields, lookups, fixed values, whatever you want to do. But again, everything I'm showing you right now is out of the box, 25 minutes on day one. The last thing I want to mention is that it is a data warehouse. So data warehouses, they're not inherently real time, but you have control over that. You can schedule the data to refresh. Obviously, that's standard within the product. But then you also have the ability anytime you need it to push this little run pipeline. And what that does is it tells Cosmos, go sync up with BC, pull in anything new or modified. On average, across our entire customer base, that takes about 20, 30 seconds. And then you get the benefits of a data warehouse, but still can have real-time data at your fingertips whenever you need it for reports. So some reports, you don't care if they're real-time. Others, it's month end, you're trying to close the books, you posted some transactions. You might want to click this button after you do that to say, go sync up with Business Central. So that's kind of the idea at a very high level. We covered a ton in the last 45 minutes. We talked about the reporting side of things, pre-built reports, creating new reports, running and scheduling reports, drill down. We talked about the two-way Power BI integration to really simplify the adoption of Power BI, make it business user friendly. We talked about the data management side of things here in the back end. And then we talked about the user administration and kind of permissions for your users and how to administer all that here. But that's really what I had to cover today. So I want to come back real quick within the PowerPoint here before we open it up for some questions. And I wanted to just kind of leave you with a little food for thought. So there was a study done by Harvard Business Review, and it talked about how companies who embrace a proper data-driven culture experience on average a 4 times improvement in revenue, performance, and better customer satisfaction. So, I mean, your data is so valuable, and so many businesses are not actually capitalizing on it. They're not taking advantage of it. They're going through the minimum and through the kind of painful ability to extract data natively, and they're not really getting the value that their data should provide. So I just wanted to kind of mention that as some food for thought. And then I wanted to open it up for any questions. So, Caitlin, did we have any of those come in while we were going through the presentation?
Yeah, and it looks like we have somebody in the chat who wants to ask a question right now. Feel free to unmute yourself and you can ask your question.
So I did have a question. In terms of future developments, are there any upcoming features or enhancements planned for Cosmos?
Yeah, actually. So, couple things there. It's a good question. So, one thing is on our knowledge base, we always post the latest and greatest. We have a whole release notes section where we talk about all the things that are coming. But it's funny, our biggest Microsoft partner event is in about 2 weeks, and we're actually going to be debuting basically a brand new version of Cosmos. And I mean, I think the feature set we've added is in like the three, 4 dozen. So, I mean, there is a ton of new stuff coming. If I was doing this webinar in a month and a half, this would look very different and include a whole bunch of new stuff. But it's all stuff to be excited about, things like handling folders and additional environments and, the ability to have reports run and just show up on your desktop or in SharePoint, all kinds of different things. So yeah, there's a ton of new stuff coming down the pipe. That is one of the nice things about cloud. You can release things when they're ready. You don't have to have people plan to go update versions and things like that. As soon as new features are available, we push them out for all of our customers. So, were there any other questions, Caitlin?
Yeah, we have another question here. What if I have custom tables and fields in Business Central?
Yep, yep. So we're going to have access to all of that. You're going to be able to bring any of that in if it's custom tables and fields, if it's, third-party solutions that extend the tables and fields within Business Central. That's one of the nice things about our BC extension. It reads absolutely everything. So you can tailor fit this however you want, report on whatever you want. It is meant to be your one-stop shop for BC.
Awesome. I have another question here for you. What does the training and implementation look like for Cosmos?
Yep. So I talked about like the online training, the stuff that's just on our website. But the other nice thing is we do have what's called our white glove onboarding. This was created based on customer feedback, and it's a really nice streamlined, one-time fee to basically have us do 2 hours of live training, work with your team for 4 hours to go in and create reports off your data, do that hand holding that people really appreciate. I mean, we'll get on with you in multiple 1 hour sessions and just say, hey, what reports do you want to create? Let's do that together. Let's show you the ins and outs and apply what you learned in the training. And then we also, as I mentioned, as part of that package, we will customize the data models in Cosmos. So again, like Sabre has a ton of customers in the manufacturing space. We would work to kind of like tailor fit Cosmos to how they do manufacturing. And I wanted to mention on that before I forget as well. Here on our website, you can find all of, our customer case studies or public reviews around Cosmos. And, we have lots of customers, obviously, in the manufacturing space. This is a great example. This customer in this case was a longtime Jet Reports user and really struggled with the performance of that product with BC. They switched to Cosmos. Reports that were taking a half a day to run, were running in seconds in Cosmos. So if you're curious to like read use cases, that's a great place to go, is like case studies or again, like our public customer reviews here.
Awesome. And then I have one more question from the Q&A. How quickly can I be up and running on Cosmos?
Yeah, so I mean, I know I talked about the 25-minute piece. I mean, it depends how you're looking at it. Like 25 minutes is truly when you're live on the product. Like everything is going, there's no heavy implementation. And then I'd say like, few hours of training, couple hours of training, and I mean, you're really truly off and running. Like I said earlier, this is proper built for business users. And so again, it's in Excel, it's friendly, it's familiar, it removes the complexity of Power BI. It's something where, the other day we had a customer buy this and they had the training package we offer. And before we even got to the training, the guy pinged us and said, hey, I still want to go through that. And there's a couple reports I want to look at with you, but he built 2 dozen reports in about a week. So it is something that again people can pick up and really run with quickly. Any other questions in there?
Not seeing any questions or hands at the moment.
All right.
Well, if that's all the questions that we have today, thank you for attending this webinar. I'd also like to thank Anthony again for presenting for us today. Once again, you can find our social media, our website, and a link to our Calendly to schedule a 30-minute meeting with one of our experts at Sabre. Otherwise, I hope you all have a great day, and we hope to see you again at one of our upcoming webinars.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day, everyone.